So this is one of our ground up development projects. You'll see here that we're building 3 new construction homes. For those that are interested in jumping into ground up development, one place you might consider starting is what we refer to as infill lots. An infill lot is when you go into an existing neighborhood and for whatever reason, maybe the builder stopped at some point along the way. So there are other houses around it, but there are lots located throughout the community that are still buildable. And that's what we have here. Hello, and I want to welcome you to this episode of the Property Power Play. I'm your host, Kito J Johnson, and it is right here that we equip you with the tools necessary to play the game of real estate and to win. I am very excited to welcome my guest for today's show, Mr. Wole Oyenuga. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Before we jump right in, just tell us who you are from your perspective.
I'm one of the principals of Urban Oasis Development, and we consider ourselves a highly innovative real estate development company located here in Atlanta, Georgia. We do everything from single-family housing to commercial and mixed-use developments.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm happy to have you. So how'd you get into ground up? Why the development? I often say there's 100 different ways to invest in real estate.
So ground up development, it really kind of came as an evolution in a sense, right? We started off with single family rehabs. And then when we got into the houses, because a lot of houses in Atlanta are really in bad shape, so we started gutting the houses out all the way to the studs.
Yep.
And then from there, we wanted to find our own like market niche. So we found houses that were actually kind of in worse condition so we can compete in the marketplace. And so we're doing second story additions. And from there, honestly, we wanted to be able to scale, and the only way to really scale like effectively and the way we wanted to was actually to start buying land and then developing the land and building new construction from there.
I remember the first property I toured that you all had done. You know, I was the guy that, went in and bought the 3-2 and painted and did some, little stuff here and there and rented it out. But to hear that you could even take the top off a house and add a whole nother level, right? Whole nother story to it. Tell me about that. I remember walking through that property and just being amazed at what you had done there.
Yeah, it's funny. It's sometimes, and I know you know from experience too, you go into a house and you see a bunch of constraints because maybe somebody's built it a certain way and you're trying to reimagine it so it could work in today's environment like an open concept. At a certain point, we just started saying, let's take these constraints off and let's see what happens, right? Sometimes we have a basement going down and we just cut the room in the middle and we say, let's say there's no basement, let's just say it's a crawl space. Well, how would that work? And from there, just when we started expanding our mind to like what the options were, it changed the game for us. I mean, it was a headache at first, but then again, just taking the idea of every issue's an opportunity. Just take it from there.
So define what development is. When we say ground up development, what do we mean when we say that?
It has lots of different connotations. So some people take development as I take a raw piece of land and I subdivide it or get it entitled. And once I entitle it, rezone so I can build something else on there. And then that's just development. And you can sell that land to somebody else. Like maybe a single family home builder, maybe a multi-family home builder, because they don't want to go through the exercise. Because sometimes that could take years. It could also take the idea of you're doing all of that stuff, but you're actually building the product, the single-family residence or the multi-family residence from the ground up itself too, and either holding it or disposing of it within a couple of years. So it's got lots of different connotations, but for single-family, we'll take it as you're developing the land, and from there you're actually building a single-family house, because that's what most people end up doing.
For those that are interested in jumping into ground-up development, one place you might consider starting is what we refer to as infill lots. An infill lot is when you go into an existing neighborhood and for whatever reason, maybe the builder stopped at some point along the way. So there are other houses around it, but there are lots located throughout the community that are still buildable. When you do something like that, it's important to be very, very careful that you match the aesthetics of the community.
Because people don't realize that even though you're buying a piece of land and you feel like you own it, you're still part of a community and a neighborhood, and they have a lot of say into what's going to happen. And there's usually plans in advance where the city has already dictated what they want to see in those areas. So when you go in there and you're not going by that exact plan or doing something different, guess what? You have to talk to the community, you have to talk to the city and figure out, hey, does my new plan match what you guys want in this neighborhood, because again, I'm part of a whole.
I want to make sure that our audience is clear that when you make the jump or decide to pursue this type of path, right, for the development, you could spend several $1,000s.
Oh yeah,
just to realize that the lot
is not buildable at all. Or
yeah.
You're not going to buy the lot. That's exactly the case.
Yeah.
Like, so you put all this money down. If you have a due diligence period, if you go past the due diligence period, now your money's hard, and you put this money towards it, and then you want to be.
Tell us what it means to say your money's hard.
Oh, I'm sorry. So your money's hard. So when you go into contract, let's say I'm buying the lot from you.
Yeah.
You're gonna tell. Normally, I'm gonna ask for like in a regular house, it's like 7 days due diligence or 10 days due diligence, right?
Right.
So on and due diligence, the time to inspect the property, and once I find for whatever reason, including the results of the inspection, I can back out of the contract and get my earnest money back, right? In land, sometimes people, when they make the jump, they don't realize how long it takes to get things. So like for the past couple of years, surveys have been backed up, 6 weeks to 3 months, right? So you may come in saying, I'll do it in 21 days or even 2 months, not realizing the survey is not gonna get back to you within 3 months, and your money's gonna go hard now, because after that 2-month period, now that whatever deposit I gave you, that $5,000 for this land, is now yours if I back out or not. Right. So when it goes hard, that's the thing you have to watch out for, and just kind of lining those things up that way.
Right. So what has that process been like, right? We partnered on the deal, you did your due diligence, right? You decided that we want to move forward. Tell me what that process has looked like.
So long journey, longer than we would have liked to have gone, just because the city was having some time during COVID getting permits through. So the first part was getting an architect on board, and we got a nice, like a great award-winning architect here in Atlanta to design this mid-century modern house. So I worked with him, got that prototype done, submitted to the city. They go through their process of analyzing, making sure that everything fits, the zoning's right, the house is structurally sound. Then we go ahead and price it out, do pro forma. And as a pro forma, it's like your financial metrics of making sure that I put all my expenses here. At the end of the day, I've got this profit margin here that makes sense. And then we start breaking ground, foundation, framing, roofing, and then once the house is dried in, then we start putting the mechanicals in. And then usually after those first group of inspections, which are the hardest because those are the most life safety type of inspections, then it's actually a lot more smooth sailing until you finish the house. Yeah. So yeah, that's where we're at right now.
One of the most important things to consider when you are beginning the project, like you've gone through your due diligence and now you're ready to build, once you're coming out of the ground with the project, you have to consider your weather patterns, the temperatures in the area. All of that is very important, and the reason it is because the first several phases of construction is important. When you pour the concrete, it's going to take a little time for that concrete to season, to cure, before you can start building up on it. Once you start building up on it, you want to pray and hope that you aren't building in a rainy season, because the goal is to get the project dried in as soon as possible. Dried in means you've got your walls up, you've got your windows in, you've got your doors in, the roof is on, and everything is secure inside. So regardless of what happens with the weather on the outside, the project is safe and secure on the inside. If someone wants to get involved in ground up development, what team members would you say are essential? Like who do I need on my team?
Realtors will be first, but really focus on realtors who can find lots, because not every realtor finds lots and everything's not listed on MLS. The surveyors that can get you a realistic time frame of getting your surveys back. Architects who can analyze a site. Again, a realtor who can know the market, what is on the back end, so you know what you're designing towards. Because the architect will only kind of design what you ask them to design. They can design the whole world, but they're not going to tell you exactly what you need to build on that site. You have to figure that out and tell that to the architect. And then lastly, your contractor, just to make sure you know what the pricing is and any issues with the land to help alleviate figuring out how that's going to work through that.
What would you say are some of the biggest challenges, and how can we mitigate those as ground up developers? So
biggest challenges are, one, a lot of people really underestimate how much money it takes. I mean, the good thing with real estate is it's a highly leveraged business, but when you're doing ground up, you're taking a lot of initial risk, right? And so sometimes even if you're going to a bank, they may require up to 50% down on the land to make that work. So you're coming out with that money, and then you got to put in that money first before, even if you have a draw situation with a lender, you got to put in that money first before you get recouped that money. And the second thing I say is, when you're buying land, like, it feels odd to kind of try and negotiate that down, but you really have to have some cushion in the land. Land development by itself should actually make money. Like you should be able to entitle the land, get permits, and sell that lot for more money than you paid and put into it to someone who's going to build a house, because you're taking away a lot of the risk, right? So you think of that mindset, like I'm just going to make sure I make money. I'm going to, even though it's to yourself, I'm making money on the land development itself. You put yourself in a good position to actually be successful on the latter part.
Any closing words, closing remarks, something you want to say to the new developer?
To the new developer, like I said earlier, just watch your cost.
Yeah.
I'd say find great partners as well too. You can't do everything yourself. You're not going to be an expert at everything. My first partnership in building was partnering with a contractor, and we became business partners and worked. And I learned the contracting side from him. There would have been so many mistakes I would have made. And funny enough, in building, it seems easy because you just throw off sticks and bricks. But it's somebody's living there. If that house falls down, that's a lot of risk that you don't want to have on your head.
Well, not only do I want to thank you for being here and a part of this conversation, but I want to thank you for the work that you and your partner that you do in the community. I've been in meetings with you. I've seen you all speak at NPUs, neighborhood planning units in the city. Your goal, not just to, again, as I said earlier, build a house and move on, but to empower the community that you're working in and to educate the community. You represent us well, and I want to thank you for it.
No, thank you, Kito. I appreciate that, man. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, you have been watching the Property Power Play with your host, Kito J Johnson. I'm delighted that you've been here for this episode. It is right here that we empower you with the tools necessary to play the game of real estate and to win. We'll see you in the next episode.
The Convo, the two-time 2023 Telly Award-winning network, and your home for conversations around Black wealth. Available on all platforms.